everyone, we are here with Cliff. Cliff is from Dry Kill Logic. You guys might remember them from the early 2000s, and they are having a resurgence, which brings to mind to me, there are only three, they've released three singles, Vices, Don't See Ghosts, right? And Now You Belong with the Dead, which if any of you guys out there are listening, you can see a progression from the early years of Dry Kill Logic to what the newest single is. And I've got to say, it's uh, it's nice to see a band that constantly like progresses through their career. Now, nothing against AC/DC, right? Like, but they have their place and we all love them, but you like to hear a band that challenges themselves, and you especially like challenging your vocals on that newest single. Props to you, dude. You sound so fucking good.
No, thank you, man. I appreciate that. It's to your point, it's been a journey over the time that we've been releasing music, but in this last song, in this last track that we released, we wanted to push the boundaries of what we felt like we could do, but not be so radically different as to, you know, offend people out of the gate just because it's not anything close to who we were. So I think, as long as we stand in service of the song, then we're comfortable with the idea that it'll always sound like us. Um, but we're open to the idea that that could take shape in a few different ways. And um, I'm just glad that, it's well received, and I appreciate the kind words. So thanks again.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's a really important thing that you said, right? In service to the song and not just like trying to break a barrier to break a barrier, because sometimes, bands do it and you're like, man, this is really good. And then they do something to like, hold on, what happened there? You know what I mean?
Yeah, or it sounds, radically different than who they've always been, and that can feel intentional at times. And, I think the only intention that we have right now is just to write music that we feel really good about. Because it's been so long, I'm not sure there's any other exercise at this point, except just return with music that we're proud of and, reintroduce that part of the band to the world. So.
So how does it feel like getting back together and like writing music? I know you guys, took a hiatus for a few years.
Yeah, it's been, I mean, it's been awesome. The important thing is that we've always been close. Jay Brendan and I have always remained, very close friends, even in the years when we weren't, active. And the hiatus didn't really have anything to do with like interpersonal relationships or any of those dynamics. So it was probably inevitable over time that we would return to the idea of writing together. We just went to dinner together and hung out and did other things. But over time, we gravitated back towards the studio. And I think it started in 2016. We began the most recent writing sessions, which produced Vices and Don't See Ghosts. And the principal framework for Now You Belong with the Dead, although there were still some things that needed to be done, we walked out of those sessions kind of with these three songs. And, we released the first two, and then COVID happened, and we took a beat around that just to kind of, the whole world took a pause. And, uh, when the things, when we received the offer to perform at Rockville and on these other festivals, we recognized that this was probably the right time to finish up Now You Belong with the Dead and make that a part of, our kind of return to audiences. We didn't want to make it only about the anniversary. We didn't want to make it only about new music. We felt like there was a lot to talk about within it. So we wanted music to be a piece of that. And moving forward, our hope is that, we're excited to record more music. So.
That's cool. Yeah. That was my next question. Obviously, I think a lot of artists right now are doing a lot of like singles. Do you guys have, is that the intention, or is there an intention there at all? Like, oh, let's only do singles or albums or whatever.
It's a good question. I think now we're at the point, we can only look at things in, what in moments and what they produce, right? And for the moments that we were writing these songs and produced these three songs. And now we're excited to get back in and produce another body of work, multiple songs, an album's worth of material. I think the part that I'm always continuously interested in is what's the right way to commercialize that. I think that the problem with releasing singles is that it sounds like a strategy if all you have is a song or two. But if you have a body of work, is consistent releases of music something that can potentially be advantageous over time? Is an album still the right way to release a body of work, or can it be in the form of supporting narratives? If you're going to go play shows, you release two or three. If you have some compelling content or a partnership, you release two or three. I think I'm still open to the idea that how consumers would like to receive bodies of work can shift, but the most important piece is having the body of work. And I think that's what we want to go in and do next, is just write another collection of songs and then come out and talk to a qualified team of folks far smarter than we are about what's the right way to introduce this. Given that now we're playing shows again and somewhat active in the world of content and conversation, what's the right way? So always open to learning and listening when it comes to that. But I think the idea of just singular, like, let's write a song, let's release a song. I think we want to do more now creatively.
Sure. That's cool. And it's funny hearing the marketer of you like come out like, okay, I don't know what the right way is, and I
Right.
absolutely understand that. Of course, you and I think are a lot alike. We come from the old school when it was like you go to the record store and you look for the cool album cover and you're like, "Oh, that's the one I'm gonna get. I hope it's good."
Exactly. Midnight sale. There's a midnight sale. There's a line outside the store. It's got to be good. It's got to be
Yeah.
good. All these people.
So it's really it's really weird, being from that era and seeing music come out. Like I understand it, but see it come out as singles. And I had a conversation with Jake E. Jake, I'm sorry, man. I don't remember the name of your band right now. It's because I'm on the spot, like because I'm trying to bring you up. And the way he explained what they wanted to do is they were market testing the material. So we're gonna put out a song, and if it does well, awesome. That one's gonna go on to an album, which is like it's a neat strategy because if we look at streaming numbers, typically the front end of an album has the bulk of the streams and the back end is so low. People are like, what happened here?
No, it's a great point, and in in past lives, I was a product manager at Motown, and that's where I learned about exactly what you're talking about, hit development, not so much artist development, but write the song that resonates with the crowd, let it hit, and then release a record with that on it immediately afterwards with a full surge and a full push. But don't do anything until you have the hit. And that came from a variety of different ways. Hit predictor for radio, which, I mean, again, I'm sure this is old hat, for guys like us, but it was those signal qualifiers that allowed that to take place. And I thought that that was a really interesting learning for me at that moment, was to understand that paradigm shift of like, it's no longer about the artist, it's about the song. And then we'll do so again, I stand in no judgment of it, but to your point, it is a fair way to look at how to come to the right conclusions, strategically. So I back it. It's a smart move.
Yeah. Wow. And that, like the hit predictors and all that stuff, you really like it starts to raise the question, I think, like the authenticity of the music. What's the point of the music? Are we trying to go after a hit, or are we just trying to put out music that we as the artist are absolutely happy with, you know?
Yeah, and to your point, does that scalable success of what a hit can bring you allow you to open the door to the conversation of here's who I am as an artist, here's how I see things, here's my next single. Whereas in a traditional, again, my time at the labels was mid 2000s. So I'm not dating anything recent when I have these conversations, but it was just an interesting shift in a moment in time where you started to see a different way to look at things. Uh, and again, the labels are institutions, so they must be doing something right. But
Yeah.
again, it's a fair way to always think about the evolving relationship between artists and audiences. And I think that it's always interesting to look at that.
Yeah, it is. And it's, looking at the history of music, it's really neat to like watch how things have changed, looking at, even back in the 40s and 50s and 60s, like how bands came together, how Led Zeppelin came together, from like studio musicians to today, where I mean, you don't have to be in the same city, you don't have to be on the same continent to write and record music together.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of going anywhere to make it is a foreign construct now, and it defined how the journey of an artist for decades. And now it's whatever basement you're in that you do the thing that gets the traction that makes the I think it's just crazy. So and not being from one of those places now becomes the new place to be. So yeah, it is a fascinating inversion in how things operate. But to be fair, that's the way it's supposed to go. You're supposed to shake your fist at the sky and not understand any of it. It's how you know it's working. So
Yeah.
I just enjoy watching it all unfold for future generations, a younger artist base than me. But it is really interesting to see how it happens now and how it all shakes out.
It is super neat. So like, for you, like being obviously part of the industry for 30 odd years. Holy fuck, that sounds so weird.
Hardcore since '94.
Yeah. Oh shit. What like what has been the biggest like change that you've seen like in the industry?
Um, I think it's the empowerment of the artist in today's world and the sort of dissolving of the walls and the barriers, and that industry hierarchy that was so prevalent for so long. Now, it's important to note, right, being a band that started at cassette tapes and ended at MySpace, YouTube and social platforms, and the idea of connecting with audiences directly did not exist in the moments when we were a band. If I wanted to connect with an audience, I had to go through a PR team. I had to go through an editorial outlet. If I wanted my music to be heard, I had to go through the gatekeepers of radio or video, MTV. If I wanted to be on tour, I had to go through the gatekeepers of agency and, the hierarchy of band structure. Now, you don't need any of that to communicate with those that appreciate your art. And the idea that you can have that relationship allows money to occur in ways that it could never occur before in that structure. So in a world where there's so much democracy, there's tremendous opportunity. Now we sit in a little bit different position because we have somewhat of an audience already that's kind of built into the legacy of the band. But thinking about when we were just a group, throwing up wheat paste posters at midnight and, using a staple gun to put flyers on telephone poles, to think about how much easier it is today to get an audience's attention, keeping it might be the problem. But these things I think are incredibly empowering now as I kind of look at the apps and the back house, information you have on streaming platforms and merchandise sales and ticket sales and, just all of this software to be able to tell you this information so you can make an educated decision. It didn't exist back then. You got in the van, you played the show, you hope people came, maybe something happened. Like, you didn't
Yeah.
know that suspension of disbelief today doesn't exist for better or worse. But that to me is the big difference, just the dissolution of the old hierarchy and the introduction of the new ways. And, there's artists I think that are just so inspiring. Like I don't know if you're familiar with that rap artist Russ, who just kind of came into his own, releasing a song a week for a year, and he shows you all the money that he made, and you see what he did, and you see how the songs got better over time. And again, not that hip hop and metal are a direct one-to-one, but the idea of continuing to advance in your craft and bringing that directly to an audience, and then being able to have a conversation, and then seeing how you flourish beyond in everything else that you do, and you don't put money first and you don't put stats first. It's a really empowering way to think about your art. So that's very exciting to me. Sorry,
It,
a lot of rambling. Didn't mean to ramble.
no, I don't think you rambled at all. I think you got on some really, some really great points that a lot of younger artists should really appreciate, like the state of the artistic world today. The accessibility to the fans, they're out there, right? Like, as crazy as it sounds, again, back in the 90s, if you wanted your music out there, it wasn't like, hey, I'm going to put it up on Spotify and the potential for 70 million people in the world to listen to it is there. It was, well, shit, I gotta make a tape or burn a CD, and then I've got to figure out how to get that into someone's hands. And man, I got it in your hands. I really hope you listen to it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to your point, think about the rite of passage to disc makers, which
Yeah.
is a term that very few will even remember. But for those that will, the rite of passage of making 100 CDs or 1,000 CDs, and the money you had to save and the money you had to make, and then you get these big boxes and you got to put them together and then you got to sell them, and you're like, whoa. I mean, that whole exercise taught you so much about yourself. The act of self-control. How many do I buy? How do I design it? Can I rein my ego in on the amount of artwork to control the cost? Like, just the whole thing was such a learning, just a part of the process. And now you bypass all of that. It's as
Yeah.
foreign as the beeps and boops that you heard when you connected to dial-up. So it's just wild to think about. Fun times.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm still absolutely amazed when I go out and I see, this young band and they're like, yeah, this is our first show and we've got, these three records right here and there's only like 20 copies of each one. It's like you're at your first show. How do you have records already?
Right.
Like,
Right. And kudos to you,
yeah.
like to have the initiative to get this done. And yeah, that's the part where it's just so interesting to see the evolution. And I'm just constantly in awe of today's kind of modern music scene, returning to it as a band and not a audience participant or somebody in the industry. To be a band now is an experience I never thought I'd have to or would have the opportunity to look at it through these lenses now, and it's really interesting. So,
Super cool. So did like you guys just played Rockville, right?
yes, sir.
How was that? Because when you guys went on hiatus, we didn't have these giant festivals, you know?
True. Yeah. I mean, everything was a touring festival at that point. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just crazy. We're just so fortunate and honored that we were a part of the lineup. We're tremendously grateful to be a part of all the festivals that we're on. And it's like, oh, we confirmed it with our agent and the team at Danny Wimmer Presents, I guess in November or something like that of last year. And I think it's like your feet hit the ground a few times during that 7 months. You're moving so fast through everything to get to that date. That just every point that you kind of land on the ground, it's just like, oh wow, this is wild. Back at it again. But being on stage after all that time, there were some parts of it that felt very natural and like riding a bike, and there were some parts of it that felt completely foreign and needed to be relearned. But it was awesome, and something I think we all really enjoyed together as just friends and folks that have been through this for so long, to return to the stage in this way. It was awesome. It was just one word. It was just awesome.
It was just awesome. That's a great way to say, but what an audience to like come back to, like
Yeah. Yeah, biggest one ever, biggest one we ever played in front of, biggest stage we've ever been on. I mean, to have our logo like on a LED wall. That's crazy. I mean, we've never been shot with a camera that wasn't a camcorder or like one of those huge digital cameras or like an MTV broadcast thing, like, you know, when you would shoot old music videos back in the day. That's what you shot on in 2004. You know, maybe some fancy little digital thing, but the idea of A, phones in the crowd, but B, like modern day lenses, modern day treatments and edits, it's like, whoa, we've never seen ourselves through a modern view. And that part was a whole experience of itself, looking at content. It's like there hasn't been any content of us since 2005. You know, like nothing. So it's just crazy. The whole thing, it's like, wow, wow, is it wild?
That's awesome. That's super awesome. So, you've got a few dates coming up. Of course, you got some smaller dates and you got incarceration kind of in the middle there.
Yeah.
Like, is there a place that you're really looking forward to playing besides incarceration, right? Because I think that'll be another like, holy shit, that was awesome, kind of thing. But
Yeah.
are you guys playing what's that New Jersey place? The
Big
Starland
guy?
Ballroom?
No, we're doing
Oh,
small clubs. So, you know, to your point, like each one of these shows carries a different emotion and experience with it. Like Rockville was, you know, second stage 20 years later, just to be on that, you know, in those hallowed halls, walking around and seeing the other artists, it was like, I, I mean, you know, it might as well have been the first time I was ever in a band. You know, walking around like, oh my God, this is crazy. Just, you know, jaws on the floor, like slack-eyed children. Like, yeah,
yeah.
total. Like, just, oh my God, you know, just getting over the wave of shock of even being in this position. And now, you know, we've got these club shows coming up, which are, you know, small, intimate headline shows, just a few hundred people, nothing crazy, kind of the shows we've always played. But the interesting thing now about these shows is that, you know, last time we played these rooms, we were, you know, 3 years off of the first album. We had just released The Dead and Dreaming. We were still young, and these were still new songs, and this whole experience was new. But 20 years later, these folks that are coming to these headline shows have a relationship with these records in a way that, you know, we don't. They've lived with the music for almost a generation now. So to perform for them is a responsibility almost. Like we want to live up to your love of these songs. And now that you're excited about seeing them live, because maybe you were 10 when we played the first time, or you weren't born, or maybe you did, and now you're coming back. Like all of these emotions connected to that are really exciting in these intimate moments. And then from there, I think we're just super excited to return to places we haven't been in so long. The next show we're playing, which is right before incarceration, is Rockfest in Cadott, Wisconsin. And we used to play Wisconsin all the time. I mean, we've played all the places, Madison, Milwaukee, Green Bay, but also places like La Crosse, Eau Claire, and that's five, and I'm telling you, there's another five that if I put you the camera off mute and go just search my tour history, you'll be amazed by how many there are. But the point is, we're super excited just to return to these places we haven't been. So that show is going to be direct support for Attila. So we have an hour, so that's a longer show in a festival setting later in the day. So that's really exciting for us because you know earlier in the day is just the apex of heat and sun. This is, you know, more at like 7 at night. So like that's super cool. And then off to Ohio. We haven't been in that Cleveland, Columbus area. Again, we play there all the time. We were you know, we play there a lot. And we're playing with Slipknot. So we're all just going to stand there like slack-eyed children again. Like, you
Yeah.
know, so super excited about that. And then we're going to Aftershock as well in October, and we're on the Thursday, and we're on just the heaviest stage. It's just the heaviest thing ever in life. And yeah, it's so crazy. So we're like, we have to just play every like beat down hardcore song we have, just make it as heavy as possible, you know, and just make it awesome and take it that way. So each show has this like different emotion attached to it. And we're just It's like it's just, we're just stoked. We have no pretense, no like preconceived notions. We're just like happy to be here, man. Like, well, just point us in the direction and we're happy to
I
do
don't
our thing.
I don't know, I think you pointed something out that maybe a lot of people don't really think about when, a band goes on hiatus and you come back and you play those smaller shows like at Dingbats in Jersey, you're gonna have fans there who are like, I've I've loved this album long enough, it's old enough to drink now,
Right.
like,
Yeah, I mean, you're right. You're right. It's true. It's a great, that's the thing. It's like, now you meet people and they have this relationship with the music and I have no idea. You discovered it in some way that I never would have thought when we wrote these songs even existed. It's nice to meet you.
yeah.
That's all you could say is you're just happy to be in a position where that's even a possibility.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I'm excited for you. I think that, like to be that close with the fans again is it's got to be something really special, not only for you, but for the entire band,
Yeah.
to be in that position where it's like, okay, cool. Like let's play some shows again. Hell
Yeah,
yeah.
viewed as friends, and it's not like a one-man army or any sort of like, cash grab. I mean, this isn't about a finance play. This is just about, the ability to play songs for folks and see some people we haven't seen in a real long time. And that part is just like super exciting. To remove the commerce means you only remain with the art. And that to us is just pretty cool to be in that position. So
Oh yeah. God, this is so freaking cool. Like you never think about it, right? Because Uh, we look at some of those bands that have come back together, Slayer, um, uh, and really no slight towards them because I absolutely love Slayer. I love that they're playing again, but that question always comes up is what was the reason behind it?
mm,
And like you've already nailed it. Like, hey, we like doing this. We're just gonna do it and see what happens, whatever that means,
yeah.
Um,
There's a freedom to that, I think, that, really works well in today's world, the ability to not be rigid with your intentions. You can be bullish on your destination and flexible on your journey. And, you want to play for fans and, continue to, have an experience, that you can rely on. And, but it just, it just evolves in what that looks like. So I think that's the biggest thing for us is like, it's different now. Everything is different now.
yeah, yeah, we're all gray and balding and like, you're like, oh shit. Oh God.
Fair
Uh,
enough.
yeah, how true it is. It's terrible. But yeah, so I really want to point out your voice on Now You Belong with the Dead because it sounds like you put a lot of work into it to get it to that space. Because leading up, like you've got a great voice, just overall a great voice, but like the cleans that you do are like, holy shit.
Man, I appreciate it. Thank you. You consume a tremendous amount of music, and for this to stand out means a lot, and I appreciate that. I think there's some things that, that you consciously think about as a musician, right? You always want to evolve as a lyricist. You want to evolve as a performer, right? And feel good that you're pushing your own boundaries. And then there's some things that, happen kind of indirectly that you can't, the change that you can't control, like the idea that I haven't really sung for 20 years and the depth and gravel that comes with, you know, smoking a lot of weed and touring all over the place when you're a young man, and then kind of getting out of that world and your voice healing. And maybe you still smoke weed, but the point is like, your voice takes on a different tone and tenor. And you recognize that as you're writing. In my head, I hear it a certain way, but when it comes out, maybe it sounds a little bit different. And then that becomes the exercise of, making sure that, are these parts good? If my voice is different now, how do you approach it lyrically? How do you approach it sonically? How do you approach the performance? What is important? What's not important? And if you think about the range of songs we've had historically on our records, we've had no problems with aggressive tracks like Rot and A Better Man Than Me, and then capping the record with Good Night. And we've run a pretty wide gamut on every record because each record has some amount of aggression and some amount of, melody and beauty and, the same level of aggression and danger. So we try to walk that line and stand in service of the song. So as long as it's a good song and it makes us feel a certain way about it, we feel confident that an audience that appreciates the art will feel the same way about it. And if that feels different than the last one, well, then that's the exercise, and that's just kind of what happened. But these things I think really become just how you look at them. And the approach vocally for me on that song was try to push the boundaries, but remain cohesive with our catalog. And the I like to think that bridge is an exercise in that range where you go from really dynamic 4-part melodies into just a beat down breakdown with 808s and bass drops, and maybe our most heavy approach to songwriting from the most melodic approach. So again, I give a lot of that credit to Greg Thomas, our producer, who really helped us shape the sound on that song and all of these singles that we've released most recently. But that song in particular, he did God's work on that, on some of those parts, especially working with me. And I'm just really grateful that he was able to take those performances and make them sound the way they do.
What a bullshit way to be like it was him. It was you too. Like it was the band, right?
Takes a
Because
village to raise a child, so everybody's got to, be recognized in that effort.
absolutely. Like I don't care how good of a producer it is. If you've got shit musicians, it's going to be a
Churning shit
shit
out.
song that's well produced, right?
Fair enough. Fair enough. You are correct. You are correct.
So you all collectively, I think it's a solid single. Like all three of the most recent singles they're fucking great songs. There's
Thank
no other way to put it. Um, Frankly, I'm excited to hear what else you guys are going to put together.
Me
Um,
too. I mean, we're just excited to write. We closed out a lot of those, these 3 songs were what came out of those sessions. As we think about the eras of the band, we feel really good about that era. And we're super excited to see what comes next. We're all inspired, we're all full. We've been able to kind of creatively collect ideas and thoughts over time, which is really the greatest gift, to be able to write against, to not, to have the moments to write the songs and write those things is critical, I think, to how we return. So we're just super excited to again kind of get together as friends and start that process. And now, open that up to, to Greg and just have his ear as a producer. Just, it's a tremendous opportunity for us, one we never imagined.
yeah, it should be really fucking amazing, whatever the next thing is.
Knock on wood, my friend.
Yeah,
Knock.
right. Like, um, do you guys have plans, or do you have plans to get together to write, or are you like really just focused on let's do these shows and just be as at top of our game for all of these shows?
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, the shows are the priority now. I want to come back, and ultimately, we really just want to have folks walk away from these shows like, man, that's exactly how I either remember them sounding or exactly how I had hoped they would sound. I just want people to walk away feeling like the songs they love were really well represented live as well. That's the greatest takeaway from 25, I think, for us. And then we'll come out of this and really go into the studio and start to write officially on a new record. I guess, in a utopia, we would be having a similar conversation next summer about a new record and going back and doing festivals and going overseas and doing some festivals and continuing the work that we've built on this year. Hopefully that's what we're aiming towards. So yeah, a body of work would be great to have for this time next year.
Yeah, well, So that'd be a lot, like, because all of you guys have like careers and lives, and like that's a good, like, I'm here for it. Whatever,
I mean,
like,
again, we all the universe is going to speak to us, and for as much as we're going to throw out into the universe what we can do, the universe is ultimately going to come back and dictate what the right way to do it is. But we've walked out of these sessions, feeling really great about the idea of writing together, beyond just, hey, let's write a song and see what happens. The idea of a collection of work now feels important to us. And like anything else in life, if it feels important, you got to pursue it. And I think that's going to be the approach. And we'll get through that the same way we're getting through this, with the same level of, rigor against the objective. And hopefully it'll be awesome.
I'm sure it will be. Like, you guys, in my experience, you guys don't have like, there's not any bad era of the band.
Appreciate
Everything you guys put out has always been solid, and the fans have liked it.
that.
Like,
We're very fortunate. We're just super fortunate.
what more can you ask for, right? The band likes it, the fans like it. You're like, all right, let's fucking keep doing this.
Dude, there's a lot of stuff to consume in this life. And the fact that Dry Kill Logic takes up any piece of anyone's day is, again, just tremendously humbling. So it's not like the world is starving for great metal music to listen to. So the fact that we're on the register for people and like we're in that conversation, I mean, again, those aren't things you can do as a band. You can only hope that they happen. And
Right.
we're just, again, we live in constant amazement and thankfulness that, folks remember us and continue to consume the music. That's the best thing we could ever ask for.
Hell yeah. Yeah, to have constant consumption, even through years of a hiatus. Like,
Yeah. I mean, almost a generation has gone by since the last time we released, a body of work. And the
you've got to
fact that
stop saying generation. Like, we're
well,
old
that's
enough
I
as it
can't. It's
is.
like I used to think I thought 20 years was impressive, and then somebody said 2 decades, and I was like, oh shit, 2 decades. And then somebody said a generation, and I was like, all right, that's the most dramatic way I
Yeah.
could say time away. So I've gravitated towards that one. But to your point, it's only for effect, not for
Yeah.
emotion. But yeah, it's just the fact that, to your point, the continuation of consumption and the fact that people still really enjoy the music. That's awesome. That's it, man. That's kind of it. It's just
Yeah.
full stop there.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It's super fucking awesome. It's really cool to see a good band put out great bodies of work, great albums, and then take a hiatus and come back, and not come back with something where you go, I'm not sure. You come back and you go, oh, holy fuck. Like,
Right.
this is still super solid. Um,
Appreciate that.
so enough of making your head big. I do have a question though. This is the big, big important one.
This is it.
Yes.
All right.
What's the favorite tour that you all did that stands out in your mind?
I would say that my favorite tour has to be the first one, because when we went out with Fear Factory to support the Darker Side of Nonsense, we had been an unsigned band for 7 years, going up and down the East Coast in a shitty little van, that had oil leaks and rots in the floor, and we were playing for no money. Door money was no money. We were just playing to, essentially they were rehearsals. And to move from that and self-releasing records and having no idea what we were doing into, you know, being within a system where it's like the hallowed halls of Roadrunner, that every band I ever loved had a poster on the wall, from Typo to Sepultura to, Slipknot and Fear Factory. And then not only to have the record come out there, but to have their team working it. And then for them to say, okay, you're going on the road with Fear Factory for 5 months, collectively. I mean, and not like first of four, direct support from the first day. We drove to I think it was Grand Rapids, Michigan, and we played the intersection, and it was sold out show, and we were direct support. And I just couldn't believe it. We were kids. We were 25, 26 years old. And I mean, just being in that moment, and we were treated very well by the band, and we were treated very well by the crew. And I really have to believe that, as I look back across all the things we've done, that has to be number one. I'd probably say number two, and a close number two, was the Drowning Pool tour when we did the Dead and Dreaming, because again, direct support, but in front of an audience that was really, really, we were very well received, and the band again very gracious and very kind to us. But that Fear Factory tour was like, if I'm ever looking back at the top of the mountain and like, God, could I ever get back to that emotion? It would probably be that one, because, we were young. It was the first, it was probably the biggest, like a lot of great memories attached to that. So,
Yeah, that's cool. That's super. I think those are like two great memories to like really go on. Um, God, first like major tour out with Fear Factory as direct support. Who would thunk it? You know what I mean?
not I, said the world.
Right. That's the truth. So, on that tour, was there a show or a hilarious incident that really sticks out? I'm sure there is.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, and you've probably heard artists talk about it too, but I remember it was on that tour. Again, the first time we played basically anywhere other than, 7 states on the East Coast. Um, but we played in Milwaukee at the rave, and we learned about it's haunted, and we learned about the pool, and we learned about all the things, and we got taken on the ghost tour. And I remember we were just, I mean, again, we were children. We were probably pretty stoned and half drunk, and just like being, completely freaked out and amazed, and having like, a child's time in a haunted house. And it was just, such an awesome moment to be vulnerable in front of folks that you pretty much just met. But it was one of those bonding, defining moments that I remember. Um, and I also remember on that tour, it was the first time we ever played LA. And we played the House of Blues, and we hung out at the Whiskey and the Rainbow. And I just remember, it's not so embarrassing, but more formative as to like what those cities mean even now to me as I look back, 25 years later, and I still go, and the things I say when I land, and I'm like, oh, I remember because of this. Every reference is back from 2001. I stayed in that hotel, and we played, oh, this place isn't here anymore. And we would go here, and we did that. And everything revolves around that. And I've been there 100 times since. But I don't talk about any of those times. I
Nope.
talk about the time that we went there with Fear Factory. And again, it's like that kind of like, childlike wonder that I look back on that tour, and that in itself is somewhat embarrassing. But it's just the innocence of those moments, I think, are the most
Should
fun.
I don't think that in my mind that's not embarrassing at all, right? Because my
Right.
my wife hates me anytime we go somewhere. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember, and she's like, "Are you fucking kidding me? Can you
Yeah.
tell me something that doesn't involve music?" I'm like,
Yeah. Right. My wife's like, how come
no,
you remember the important stuff around the
yeah,
house? Like, but I remember this.
yeah.
That's where the House of Blues was.
She's like, you've got such a great memory. I'm like, no, I've got a great memory when it comes to certain things.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I have a
Other
select
things,
memory.
yes, like ah, other things. I'm like, get rid of that shit. I need more room for more music. Like, I got
Exactly.
no way. Okay, Cliff. Um, man, I've had a great time talking with you. I
Thank you,
can't
man.
thank you enough for your time again tonight.
No,
I'm
thank you.
really I'm excited that you guys are back playing shows and putting music out. I hope that I can see you close enough to me sometime over the next year or so uh, that I can come see you.
I hope so, man. I mean, just select places that we're gonna get, but if we're in driving distance, I can't promise you we'll get any closer. So we'll do our best to get as close as we can, but the last couple of hundred steps I might need you to take, my friend.
Yep, yep, for sure. Yeah, I mean, we could always get you to play in my basement. I don't care.
Hey
The
man, we're
wife
not
might.
above it. We're not
Yeah,
above a good gig where people appreciate the music. So
hell yeah. Awesome. Well, Cliff, thank you again, man. I hope you go and have a great evening.
thanks, man. You too. Thank you again for the
Thanks.
time.
Yep, see ya.
Later, man.